my name is Asya, and we continue our series of 300-degree video from St. Petersburg. Today we are having river and canal cruise in the city. This city is called Venice of the North. We are situated on 42 islands. There is Italian and French architecture around, and all these beautiful facades are reflected in these rivers and canals. And we start our tour from the Winter Canal, the artificial canal that connects Moika River to the main river of the city, Neva. And now we are going under the bridge and we are entering the Winter Canal. From the beginning, when the city was founded in 1703 by Peter the Great, his plan was to build Venice of the North. He invited the best architects from all over the world to make this city absolutely extraordinary and beautiful. It is the least Russian city in Russia, and I think the most beautiful city in Europe. To the left now, we can see the beautiful building of our naval archive. St. Petersburg is the second biggest seaport in Russia, and of course all the documents from the Navy are here. So this is the building to the left. And now we are going under one more bridge. And to the left now, we will see the building of the new Hermitage. Hermitage is the biggest museum of Russia and one of the biggest museums in the world. It took them nearly 2 centuries to build all these buildings, and the newest was from the middle of 19th century. Now you can see it to the left. The new Hermitage was built by the German architect Leo von Klenze. It is the only building of the museum which was designed as a museum from the beginning. They knew what they were going to exhibit, and the interior of each room matches what's inside. So you can see this beautiful picture gallery to the left. The collection of the whole museum comprises more than 3 million exhibits. And now we are going to enter the main river of the city, the Neva. Neva is not that big, but it's only 74 kilometers, but it is very wide and beautiful. And first, please look to the right before we go to the Neva. We can see a small piece of Palace of Peter the Great. These 2 small yellow buildings to the right was the part of his winter palace. And now, under the passage from the Hermitage to the Hermitage Theatre, we are entering the Neva. So we are now in the very heart of St. Petersburg. This is the widest place of the river, 1.5 kilometers. There is a building of stock exchange to the left, which looks like a Roman temple, as Catherine the Great preferred this kind of architecture. It situates between 2 lighthouses, as this was the seaport in the beginning of the history of the city. And right in front of us there is a beautiful fortress, Peter and Paul's fortress. This city was founded after a long war between Sweden and Russia. And the first thing that Peter the Great wanted to build here when the city was founded, when he got this lands, was the fortress. This fortress was meant to defend the city from the Swedish Navy. There was no sense in building high walls because the artillery was very well developed and any walls could be destroyed. They were trying to build something wide so that the fire from the fortress walls would cover the whole area and no ship would be able to go past it. Today, the fortress is not a fortress anymore. It's the Museum of History of St. Petersburg, and there you can learn everything from the beginning, from 1703 till nowadays. Today, this is the second biggest city of Russia with a population of 5 million people, but for 200 years that was the capital of Russian Empire. So this country was ruled from here, from the Winter Palace, and the Peter and Paul's Cathedral and Peter and Paul's Fortress was the burial place for the ruling dynasty, for Romanov. It is like Westminster Abbey in London. It's the sacred place where you can find everybody from Peter the Great to Nicholas II. So the walls of the fortress are built of bricks, but they are covered with granite from the side that looks at on the Winter Palace. Catherine the Great didn't like red bricks. For her, it wasn't luxurious enough, and the side that she could see through the windows was faced with granite. Granite is local material. All the embankments of the rivers are covered with it, and it's also from times of Catherine the Great. The The fortress today is not just a fortress, not just a museum, it is also a public beach. And people come here to sunbathe, even on a rainy day or a cloudy day like today. So if we look at the sunny, or today just sandy, beach of Peter and Paul's fortress, we can see some people, and also we can see the festival of sand sculptures. In winter there is a festival of ice sculptures there. So you can spend the whole day just in the fortress, but now please look at the beautiful spit of Basil's Island. Basil's Island is the biggest among 42 islands of St. Petersburg. Nobody knows exactly who was the Basil it is called after. Maybe that was General Basil who got a big piece of land on Basil's Island when the city was founded. So that spit of Basil's Island was the seaport of St. Petersburg until the middle of 19th century. All the ships, mostly merchant ships, arrived here. Of course, they needed lighthouses. Neva has very bad character as any woman, so it's unpredictable. And they needed lighthouses to find their safe way to the bank. And now we can see these two lighthouses, these red columns. The fire on the top today is lit only on special occasions, like birthday of the city or Victory Day. For the rest of the time, they're just memorials to naval victories of Peter the Great. He defeated Swedish fleet, he had some battles with the fleet of the Ottoman Empire, and he wanted to commemorate this. The columns are called rostral columns. Rostra in Latin means prow of the ship, and they are decorated with prows of the ships. At the bottom of the columns, you can see the monuments symbolizing main trade rivers of the country. One of them is the Neva. So to the right is the spit of Basil's Island. As for the building of a stock exchange, it was built at times of Catherine the Great, and that's why it looks like a Roman temple. She preferred such kind of architecture. Today, the building is empty. It was given to the Hermitage Museum. They're going to restore it, and soon they will open new exhibition there. Before, in Soviet period, there was Naval Museum inside. And as for the Hermitage itself, please look to the left now. We can see the beautiful building of the Winter Palace. It was built in early 1760s, and since then it was the royal residence, the main royal residence, where they spend the time from early autumn till late spring. That's why it is called Winter Palace. After the revolution, together with all other buildings connected to it, it became the museum. And today this is one of the biggest museums of the world. As it is called Palace, Winter Palace, the bridge that we are approaching is called Palace Bridge. It was built in the beginning of 20th century and it is a metal bridge. So now we are going to go under one of the most beautiful and famous bridges across the Neva. As this river is used for navigation, all the bridges across it are drawbridges and they open at night. They open from 1:30 till 5 in the morning, and that is quite a show. All the bridges are decorated with beautiful lights. The weather in the summer is much warmer, and people walk all night long on the banks of the river, enjoying the view of these open bridges. Also, it's a very popular excuse not to come home at night. Just sorry, I was on the wrong bank of the river, I missed the time, and that's why I'm that late at home. So to the right we can still see Basil's Island, and some of the most historical buildings are situated here. To the right now you can see the building of the first museum of Russia, Chamber of Curiosities. It is a green building with big tower. The name Chamber of Curiosities comes from times of Peter the Great. The beginning of the collection were the unique, curious, unusual things he found in Europe, bought them and brought to Russia. So this is Chamber of Curiosities. Today it's the Museum of Ethnography, where you can learn about nations and tribes from all over the world, starting from American Indians and to Japanese samurais. And next to the building of Chamber of Curiosities, there is a beautiful yellow building in classical style with white columns. This is Academy of Science. It was founded by Russian scientist, scholar, poet Michael Lomonosov. He also founded the first university in Russia, Moscow University. And to the right we can also see the monument to Michael Lomonosov. Next to him is a long red building of 12 colleges, 12 ministries founded by Peter the Great. Today the building belongs to St. Petersburg State University, and it's only one of over 80 buildings around the city and the suburbs. And next to the building of 12 colleges, a little bit further down the bank of the river, there is the first and biggest palace of St. Petersburg, which belonged not to the founder, not to Peter the Great, not to his wife, but to his best friend. His best friend, Alexander Menshikov, was the governor of the city, and he was responsible for the construction of the city. Of course, he built something grand and beautiful for himself. This palace was the biggest thing in the city in the beginning of 18th century. It had beautiful Baroque interiors, and actually its owner, Alexander Menshikov, ruled country for 2 years after Peter the Great. It was Peter's wife, Catherine, sitting on the throne, but actually she was like a puppet, and the real ruler was Alexander Menshikov. And 2 years after Peter the Great died, Alexander Menshikov was arrested for corruption, together with his whole family sent to Siberia, and this palace to the right became the property of the government and then was given to the School of Cadets. And the school was there till late 1990s, when the palace was given to the Hermitage, restored, and now it's the branch of the biggest museum of St. Petersburg. And now we're making a turn, and to the right we can see the Annunciation Bridge. It's the first bridge across the Neva. First among 21 bridges, 20 of them are drawbridges, one is a suspension bridge, that is the newest bridge in the east of the city. So Annunciation Bridge opens first at 1:25 a.m. And to the right now we can see the biggest cathedral of St. Petersburg, St. Isaac's Cathedral. It took 40 years and 3 emperors to build this church. They started the construction in 1818, and that was Alexander I who approved the project. Then Nicholas I continued the construction of this cathedral, and in 1858 Alexander II opened this church. This church is meant for 5,000 worshippers to be inside simultaneously, and today it's not just a cathedral but also a museum. And there are 2 ways of visiting this museum. One is to go inside, the other is to climb up 262 steps and see the city from the height of 47 meters from the colonnade. Right in front of St. Isaac's Cathedral, there is a famous monument to Peter the Great called Bronze Horseman. It's also one of the symbols of the city. We see Peter the Great sitting on a horse as a winner, and the horse is standing on a snake, which symbolizes all enemies of Russia defeated by Peter the Great, and he is pointing on Basil's Island, where he planned to build the center of the city. So when Peter the Great founded the city, he built not only Peter and Paul's fortress, but also he founded Admiralty. Shipbuilding was the main industry of the city. Until nowadays, we have a very big shipbuilding yard in the western part of St. Petersburg. So to the right now, the building of Admiralty begins. It's very big, built in classical style. So this is the yellow building with a flag with blue cross on the top. This is the flag of St. Andrew, patron saint of the Navy. The building goes all behind other grey buildings and finishes near the Winter Palace. Where we see the grey buildings today, they used to be shipbuilding yard. But later, when the industry became much bigger, they had to move it to the west of the city, and here they constructed some new buildings. In the middle of Admiralty, of the building of Admiralty, we'll see the beautiful spire with ship on the top. It's also one of the symbols of St. Petersburg. In Soviet period, when the name of the city was Leningrad, that was the main symbol. And even today, if you come to St. Petersburg by plane and buy something in duty-free, they will give you a plastic bag with this ship as a symbol of the city drawn on it. So the Admiralty is to the right, and in a minute we'll see one more monument to Peter the Great in front of it. Before he founded the city, the Tsar traveled in Europe, and altogether he spent 2 years there. Most of the time he worked on the shipbuilding yard in Holland, and here in front of the Admiralty there is a monument to Peter the Great showing him as a carpenter. That was actually a kind of industrial spying, and that's how he learned the secrets of shipbuilding, and that's how he managed to found fleet in Russia and shipbuilding yard in St. Petersburg. So now to the right we can see another monument to Peter the Great. Here he is shown as a carpenter, and next to it is the end of the building of Admiralty. Remember where it started? It's only now finishing here. And now we are approaching Palace Bridge again. And next to the Palace Bridge there is Winter Palace. It was built in the beginning of 1760s for daughter of Peter the Great, Elizabeth. She chose her favorite architect, Rastrelli, to build the winter residence. By that time he had already built 2 summer palaces for her. Winter Palace is built in Baroque style. There is a throne room, beautiful church, and enormous picture gallery inside. But the beginning of the collection of the museum is not connected with Elizabeth. Unfortunately, she died a year before the palace was completed, and the first person who moved into the palace was Catherine the Great. So she didn't like Baroque style, and you won't find many Baroque interiors inside the palace. She preferred classical style, and most of the rooms were designed for her. And also Catherine the Great was the one who started the collection of the museum. She couldn't travel herself and choose all these artworks herself, but she had very well-educated nobles who were traveling all around Europe and looking for collectors who were going bankrupt. And when they were going bankrupt, they were ready to sell the whole collection. And her people were buying not just several items, but hundreds of pieces of art for her growing collection. And if at the beginning of her reign we had nearly no European art in Russia, by the end of her reign we had one of the biggest collections in Europe. And every next generation of the royal family continued to buy more and more art. The collection is not the same in different parts because it depended on the taste of the emperors, what they bought and what they didn't buy. So we have a lot of Dutch and Italian art, that's what they preferred, but also quite an important antique collection and a very big collection of coins. Altogether today it comprises more than 3 million exhibits. And as the collection was growing, they needed more and more buildings for it. So first is the Winter Palace, which was built in early 1760s. Next to it we will now see a small green building of small Hermitage. That was the first building of the museum. The word Hermitage derives from the word hermit, a person who was looking for solitude. And really, Catherine the Great was the only person who was walking in the picture gallery. She enjoyed her paintings together with her cats. From the beginning, the big problem for the museum for the gallery was how to preserve the paintings to save them from mice and rats. And till nowadays, the only effective way is to have the army of cats. Catherine the Great ordered to bring some to the Hermitage, and till nowadays they have 50 cats on budget. They feed them, they look after them, and several times a year they organize Hermitage Kitten Day, when they give out kittens from the most famous museum of Russia. So the first building was small Hermitage, where Catherine enjoyed the paintings herself. But the collection was growing bigger and bigger, and in 1770s Catherine built one more building, Great Hermitage, and this is the long beige building we can see to the right now. And also, she was a very talented woman. She wrote plays herself, and as she was an empress, she wanted to have her own stage for this plays to be performed there. So she built the Hermitage Theatre in 1880s. So one by one, early 1760s Winter Palace, late 1760s Small Hermitage, 1770s Great Hermitage, and 1780s Hermitage Theatre. And now to the right we will see the Winter Canal, the first canal we took in the beginning to get to the Neva River. So the Hermitage Theatre and the Great Hermitage are connected by the small bridge by the passage across this canal, and when it was built people were afraid to come inside. They thought it would collapse into the river. When Catherine the Great heard the rumors, she organized a party for 200 people there. They danced all night long. It stayed, it didn't collapse, and since then people believed it was safe enough to come. So to the right we can see this Winter Canal and this bridge from the Great Hermitage to the Hermitage Theatre. There is one more building of the museum that cannot be seen from the river. It is the new Hermitage. We saw it in the beginning of the tour. It is right behind the Great Hermitage. And now we can see more beautiful buildings to the right. All these buildings were palaces. In each generation of royal family, one child became the heir to the throne, became the Tsar. Everybody else, all his brothers and sisters, became Grand Dukes and Grand Duchess. And they were given money from the budget to build their own palaces. So all the buildings we see to the right, after the buildings of the museum, were private palaces that belonged to the royal family. Today, in some of them, there are different institutions. In some, there are still apartments. And one of the most beautiful palaces is to the right now. There is a beautiful brown building in neo-Renaissance style with arched windows, and that was the palace of Grand Duke Vladimir. If something happened to Nicholas II, he would be the heir to the throne. And that was the second important palace after the Winter Palace in Russian Empire. Today there is so-called House of Scientists inside, but they also organize tours and show beautiful interiors of Vladimir Palace to the right. And to the left we can see the fortress again. So Peter and Paul's fortress today is opened all day long. You can either walk on the top of the walls or go inside the museums or go to the service in the cathedral. A little bit further next to the fortress there is a wooden ship which has no history at all. Actually this is just a restaurant with a concrete basement, but quite a nice one, and it pretends to be a pirate ship. It's called Flying Dutchman. Next to Peter and Paul's fortress to the left there is the first square of St. Petersburg, Trinity Square. There used to be a beautiful church there, first wooden, then it was rebuilt in stone, but unfortunately in Soviet period it was demolished, as well as many churches in St. Petersburg, but the most beautiful survived. So instead of that old church, there is a small new chapel there, and we can see it in the beginning of the bridge to the left. The small chapel with gilded dome is called Trinity Chapel, and it commemorates the place where the first church used to be. So the bridge, which starts from the Trinity Square, is called Trinity Bridge. It is more than half a kilometer long, and it was built by the same French company that constructed the Eiffel Tower. So it can be even called the horizontal Eiffel Tower. And when we come closer, you will see these beautiful metal laces of the Trinity Bridge. At the same time, the bridge of Alexander III was constructed in Paris. So you see these are like brother bridges. One in St. Petersburg, Trinity Bridge, the other in Paris, Bridge of Alexander III. And to the right from the Trinity Bridge, we can see the most expensive palace from the second half of 18th century. That was a present of Catherine the Great to her first and maybe most famous lover, Grigory Orlov. He helped her to become the empress, and of course she wanted to thank him, and she presented him this palace. It is called Marble Palace. This is brown, light pink and gray building to the right, and it is called marble as very many kinds of marble are used to decorate it inside and outside. During the imperial times, it belonged to different Grand Dukes and Grand Duchesses, because after Grigory Orlov died, Catherine the Great brought this palace back to treasury. And in Soviet period, they saved the palace, turning it into Museum of Lenin. If something was connected with Lenin, it was sacred and nobody could touch it. Today, it's the branch of Russian Museum. You can find different temporary exhibitions of contemporary Russian art, and also some interiors from imperial times. In the yard of the garden next to the Marble Palace, there is also a monument to the Emperor, to Alexander III. For just a very short moment to the right, we'll see a man on a horse. And this monument used to be in front of one of the railway stations in St. Petersburg. Later in Soviet period it was removed, fortunately not destroyed, and now it stands here in front of Marble Palace. So if you look to the right now, in the garden, you will see that monument to Alexander III. And there is some logic here. Next to Alexander III there is a bridge which was also dedicated to him. On each lantern of this bridge it's written A3, Alexander III. To the left from Trinity Bridge we can see the dome, beautiful blue dome and minarets of the mosque of St. Petersburg. We needed to build the mosque in the very and of 19th century. By that time, there were already very many Muslims in the city, as Middle Asian republics became the part of Russian Empire. And the construction started and was finished in 1913. It was opened by Nicholas II. Until nowadays is the biggest mosque of the city, which gathers around 50-60,000 worshippers when there are big celebrations. And now we are finally approaching the Trinity Bridge, and you can see all these beautiful metal constructions of the bridge. You see it is quite low, but in Soviet period a famous pilot, Chkalov, managed to fly by plane under this bridge. It was like a miracle, and it was so surprising that nobody was able to punish him for such a heroism. To the left from the bridge, we can see the dome of mosque again, and another wooden ship, another restaurant. And to the right from the bridge, there is the most famous garden of St. Petersburg, first public garden of the city, Summer Garden. It was founded by Peter the Great, as well as the other sides. It's situated on the island, and it is surrounded by rivers and canals from all sides. It was founded as French regular garden. Everything is geometrically organized there, but now, after more than 300 years, the trees are high, and unless you go inside, you don't see this pattern. But we can see the beautiful railing of the Summer Garden. It is considered to be one of the best masterpieces in St. Petersburg, and it is also one of the symbols of the city. It is very simple, but it has right proportions and kind of its own rhythm. So if you come to St. Petersburg, don't miss this beautiful railing of the Summer Garden. There are two entrances to the garden. One is from here, from the embankment. The other is from the opposite side. It is free, and it is open every day from 10 to 10, except for Tuesday. Inside the Summer Garden, there were lots of fountains, and that was also the idea of Peter the Great, to build a small Versailles. The main park with the fountains is in the southwest of the city. It is called Peterhof, but Summer Garden is the smaller version of it. And in front of the Summer Garden, on the other side of the river, Peter the Great lived during the construction of the city. He was a very modest person and lived in a small log cabin, which is now still preserved and is situated inside the small brick building. So it was over there where you can see the trees to the left. And now we are turning from the Neva to other river, which is called Fontanka River. The first fountains in the Summer Garden got water from there. And while we are turning, please look to the left. Over there you can see the crane, the bright blue building, and gray pipes. These are the pipes of famous military cruiser Aurora. It was built in 1900, and during the revolution in 1917 it was in St. Petersburg. It made their signal blank shot, and that was the signal to start the attack of the Winter Palace. Today it is the museum, and it has just returned to the city. They are going to open again this museum in a few weeks. So cruiser Aurora is the gray military ship over there, and now we are leaving the Neva River and entering the Fontanka River. We can wave to the people, maybe they will answer to us. Usually they do. That is a nice tradition in St. Petersburg. Let's see, maybe somebody will wave to us. Okay. So to the right, the building under scaffolding is the former Palace of Peter the Great. Today it's another branch of Russian Museum, and when they open it after restoration, it will be a perfect Baroque palace. And now we are approaching another historical part. To the right is the Summer Garden, to the left is the former School of Lawyers. Not all famous people, from Russia were going to do what they were finally doing. For example, everybody knows composer Pyotr Tchaikovsky, but first his parents wanted him to become a lawyer, and he was the student of this school to the left. All the students of this school of lawyers wore special uniform. in this uniform, they look like small birds. And there is even a poem about the small birds, siskins, yeah, they look like these birds. Siskin, Siskin, where you've been? At Fontanka, this is the name of this river, had a drink, had a vodka, had one more, then my head got really sore. So as any students, they were missing the classes and they were walking around this river. And today there is a small monument to these students, and I will show it to you a little bit later. But now we are approaching another beautiful building. To the left now we'll see the building from the beginning of 20th century. It was built for the exhibition which was held annually in St. Petersburg, and originally that was the place of salt town. Salt was as expensive as gold in 18th century. Some families, like Stroganov family, for example, became extremely rich because they were selling salt. And that was such a salt market here. Later they constructed the building for the exhibition, and it is called Salt Town. So take a look at these neo-Renaissance arches and Baroque decorations of the building. It is to the left. And past the summer garden next to it, we can already see the bright orange building, which is the only castle of St. Petersburg. This is the castle of Paul I. Paul I ruled the country in the end of 18th, beginning of 19th century. He was the only son of Catherine the Great. He was waiting for so long, for 34 years, to become the Tsar. And when he finally became the Tsar, the first thing he started was the construction of his own castle. He planned it himself. All four facades of the building are different, and he called it after the home church. The church is dedicated to Archangel Michael, so it is called Michael's Castle. And now we will go under the bridge and we will see Michael's Castle better. To the right, you can also see the people throwing coins on the small sculpture of Siskin. So it is connected with the students of the School of Lawyers, and later we will see it better when we return to this place. So now please keep looking to the right, and here is the Michael's Castle. The color is very unusual. Traditionally, the buildings in St. Petersburg are very bright. We have only 60 sunny days a year, and of course everybody wants to see something positive even on a cloudy day. But as for the color of this building, it was the color of a glove Paul I found during the ball. It was a glove of one of ladies-in-waiting. He liked the color and immediately sent the glove to the architect and ordered to paint buildings into this color. Of course, wife of Paul I always hated this color. So this castle is famous because Paul I was killed here. He ruled for 4 years, 4 months and 4 days, and after 40 days he moved into this castle. He was killed in his own bedroom by the nobles who were not pleased with the reforms of Paul I. Then his son Alexander I came into power. The family of Paul left the castle, and it was given to the School of Engineers. One of the most famous students of this school was Fyodor Dostoevsky, a famous Russian writer. Today, Michael's Castle is another branch of Russian Museum. And now we are approaching the building of circus. Circuses in Russia have permanent buildings. They are situated not just in tents, they are not traveling like nomads all around the country. And the first permanent stone building of the circus was built in St. Petersburg by entrepreneur Cinizelli. So it is called the Circus of Cinizelli. It was freshly restored this year, and now you can see the beautiful yellow building of circus to the right. It is also sometimes called Circus on the Fontanka River. And to the left, in a minute, we'll see one of the oldest churches of St. Petersburg, the Church of St. Simeon and Anne. It was built in 1730s when Anne, niece of Peter the Great, ruled the country, so it is dedicated to her patron saint. This is the Church of St. Anne to the left. The Fontanka River used to be the border of the city for the whole 18th and first half of 19th century. And then lots of palaces were constructed along the banks of this river that belonged to different noble families. To the left now we will see Sheremetyev Palace. That family supported theaters all over Russia, and the first peasant theater was in this building. And that's a story of like Cinderella connected with this family. One of the actresses in this peasant theater was extremely beautiful and nice woman, and Count Sheremetyev fell in love with her. He married her, he made her a noble woman, and he made the whole society accept her. So she started as a peasant, she finished as the wife of Count Sheremetyev. And the theater was here in this beautiful palace. You can see coat of arms of the family above the gates. Today there is a museum of musical instruments inside the Sheremetyev Palace. And to the right now we will see one more palace which belonged to Shuvalov family. They were also collectors of art, and today the palace belonged to Fabergé Museum. Fabergé was a famous jeweler who worked for Nicholas II and who was producing famous eggs, the Easter presents that Nicholas II gave to his wife and his mother. And in this grey two-story building to the right now, you can find 14 out of 52 eggs that were produced in the beginning of 20th century. And over there we can see the beautiful bridge decorated with the statues of horses. It's called Anichkov Bridge, as the lands next to it belong to General Anichkov. These horses, these sculptures were made by famous sculptor Claude, and they were so beautiful, everybody liked them so much that the copies of these sculptures were sent to Madrid, were brought to Berlin, and when you come, for example, to Museum Island in Berlin, you can see the copies of these sculptures. So now we can see the granite banks of the rivers closer. Before, when there were floods in St. Petersburg and when the banks were not protected with granite, they were just wooden constructions, every time after each flood they had to build them again. So Catherine the Great is called the Great for many things, and one of them is the granite embankments that she made. Most of the buildings along the rivers are former income houses. That was the special type of houses we had in the capital, and St. Petersburg was the capital of Russian Empire. And all the apartments that were in such houses were for rent. One family owned the building, other people came from all over Russia and rented apartments, so the owner got regular income. That's why they are called income houses. Usually the most luxurious flats were on the second and third floor. The first floor was never used for apartments, they were only services, and under the roof were the cheapest flats. For example, in Crime and Punishment, the main hero lives in a small room under the roof, because that was the cheapest thing and even a student could afford it. So there is a limit for the height of the buildings in St. Petersburg. You see that most of them are 4, maximum 5 floors height. And that is because of the order of Peter the Great. No building could be higher than the royal residence, than the Winter Palace. Also, most of them are very bright. As we have such a depressing climate, everybody wanted to have something bright. And if the owner wanted to build something dark, he had to pay extra taxes. So if you see dark buildings in St. Petersburg, it means it belonged to somebody who wanted to show off. Usually to some banks, to insurance companies, or some very rich people. But the most popular color is yellow, of course, because this is the color of the sun we are always missing. The owners of income houses were always trying to attract attention of people to their houses, so they would choose this very building to rent a flat. And that's why they were beautifully decorated with different balconies, windows of a regular shape, with some columns, porticos, and that explains why St. Petersburg is so beautiful. That was a kind of advertisement. Everybody was trying to attract more clients. But also there are some sad pages in the history of St. Petersburg, and in 20th century, when it was called Leningrad, during the Second World War, the city was in siege. People were dying here because of starvation. The city was surrounded by the Nazis. Nobody could leave the city, nobody could come to the city, and more than 1,200,000 people died here. And there are some memorials connected with this war, with this siege. To the left now you can see the heating station, which continued to work even in the siege, even during this terrible 900 days. And this building may seem not too beautiful, yeah? But it is very significant for the citizens of the city, for those whose relatives sacrificed their lives to save all this culture and all this beauty for the descendants. So thanks to these people, today St. Petersburg is still here with all these beautiful buildings. And to the left now, again, we see Michael's castle. We can see the facade over there, decorated with beautiful pink marble. So outside the building is square, inside it is octangular, and there is a small monument to Paul I there. Today, when it is the branch of Russian Museum, they have not only temporary exhibitions, but also they organize tours to that very bedroom where Paul I was killed. And there are some mystical things connected with Paul I. For example, some people say that still the ghost of Paul I lives inside the castle, and if you come here at midnight, you can see his head, his figure in one of the windows. So from the Michael's castle, we will turn to Moika River, the river we started from, and we'll see another facade of the building that looks at the summer garden. Another interesting fact is that Paul I was born here. There was a wooden palace of Elizabeth, his grandmother, where he was born, and then he disassembled the wooden palace and built a stone castle where he was finally killed. So it is the same place where he was born and when his life finished. And now please be very careful. To the left we'll see the smallest monument in St. Petersburg, which is only 16 centimeters high. This is a monument to this bird, Siskin, or actually to the students of this school of lawyers. Here it is. And people usually throw coins, and if the coin stays at the pedestal of the bird, your wish will come true. So Summer Garden is again to the right, Michael's castle is to the left, and we are in Moika River. The original Finnish name of this river was Mya. To make it sound more Russian, they called it Moika. Next to the Michael's castle, next to the Summer Garden, there is one more garden in St. Petersburg, which is different. It is designed in English style. It looks more wild. It's a landscape park. Every June, there is a big exhibition of landscape designers organized inside Michael's garden, and there you can see absolutely crazy things made of flowers and trees, some unusual gazebos, and sometimes even artworks made of different flowers. So the Michael's garden will be now to the left, and we'll see one of the coffee houses. The same we saw in the Summer Garden, the same we'll see here. Usually there was a pier next to such a house, and it was used like one of the gazebos in the park. To the left is the Michael's garden. To the right is the Field of Mars. The field to the right doesn't look like a field. It is a garden today, and in the middle of the garden there is a burial place of revolutionists with the first eternal flame in the Soviet Union. Before, there was a training ground for the regiment of Paul I that lived in the barracks next to the Field of Mars, and it is called so after the god of war, Mars. So garden to the left, Field of Mars to the right, and now we are approaching one of the symbols of St. Petersburg, the church and the spilled blood. St. Petersburg is the least Russian city in Russia. It has lots of beautiful buildings. Most of them have Italian or French style. There is only one building in the city center which is absolutely Russian, and it was built in 1907. The church that we will see is called the Church on the Spilled Blood and is built above the place where Alexander II, Tsar Liberator, was assassinated in 1881. He was returning to the Winter Palace in a carriage, and the terrorists who thought that by killing the Tsar they would provoke the revolution and improve everything in the country, they were waiting for him. They threw a bomb in the carriage. He wasn't injured, as he was extremely lucky. He went outside to check the people, and then the second terrorist appeared with a suicide bomb, and Alexander II was killed. And people decided to build a memorial to Alexander II, and this beautiful church to the left with gilded domes and colorful domes decorated with enamels was built in the end of 19th, beginning of 20th century to commemorate this place. So it is more a memorial to the Tsar than a church. They took 16th century Moscow churches as samples, and in 1907 the Church of the Spilled Blood opened on the bank of the canal. So to the left now you can see this church, which is a museum now. Today, Church of the Spilled Blood is one of the symbols of the city. 99% guidebooks that you can find here has this on the front page. Next to the Church of the Spilled Blood, we can see the former buildings of the royal stables. Today, the building is going to be restored. It was given to the Museum of History of St. Petersburg, and then they're going to open the exhibition there. In the middle of the building, there is a church. And this church is very significant to all Russian-speaking people because famous poet Alexander Pushkin, his funerals took place in this church. Alexander Pushkin means for Russian-speaking people what Shakespeare means for English people, Dante means for Italians, and Pushkin means for us. Yeah? He is the first poet who started writing poems in colloquial Russian. And he was killed on a duel when he was only 37 years old, and his funerals took place in the Church of the Royal Stables, as he rented an apartment not far from here. And very soon we'll see the museum, which is dedicated to Alexander Pushkin. This part of St. Petersburg is maybe one of the most beautiful and most prestigious. We can see beautiful bright buildings and a narrow winding river, and this part really reminds Venice. And the best time to visit St. Petersburg is in the end of June when we have white nights. So what is white nights? In the end of June, the night is very short. Sun sets at midnight and rises at about 3 a.m., so it doesn't get completely dark. The whole night it's warm, all the bridges are open and decorated with lights, and that's the most romantic period in St. Petersburg, when people can walk and enjoy Venice of the North. So originally Peter the Great planned that all people would travel by boats here, like in Venice. But you know, our climate is not for such kind of transportation. The rivers freeze in winter, and it is also beautiful in winter. When you come here, you can even skate on the surface of some of the frozen rivers. Today, the embankment of Moika River is the place where different consulates of different countries are situated, and the biggest literature museum of St. Petersburg is also situated here. To the left now we can see house number 12 on the embankment of Moika, and that was the place where Alexander Pushkin rented his last apartment. Today it's only a small part of the museum. The rest of the building is dedicated to the history of literature, and that was the golden age in our literature, starting from Pushkin until the middle of 19th century. So here is this yellow building, Museum of Alexander Pushkin in the city. And now we are approaching the main square of the city, Palace Square. It situates on the other side of the Winter Palace. We saw it from the embankment, and now we'll see the square from the other side. This square is not just a big open space. It's also a kind of concert hall. Big concerts of stars from all over the world take place on the Palace Square. Paul McCartney performed here twice, several times Sting, Scorpions, and other famous pop and rock stars. On one side of the Palace Square there is Winter Palace. On the other side is that big yellow building that we can see in front. This is the building of General Staff and different ministries of Russian Empire situated there. Today, part of the building belongs to the Hermitage, and that's where you can find the collection of Impressionists and Post-Impressionists and see some of the most extraordinary modern exhibitions of contemporary art. The other half of the building still belongs to different offices, including some military offices and military port. And the bridge that we are approaching is one of the widest bridges in St. Petersburg. It is 70 meters wide and it's called Singer's Bridge. Next to that bridge, to the left, there is a building of Capella. That was a special house for singing, which was founded by Elizabeth, daughter of Peter the Great. She was fond of chanting, and actually she was even secretly married to a man from the choir with a beautiful voice. And she built Capella, which works till nowadays, and where you can listen to the classical music. And now to the right is Palace Square, to the left is the building of Capella, and we are going under the Singing Bridge. A little bit frightening, isn't it? So to the right is the building of General Staff, and we are now finishing our tour. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed this tour, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.